Good morning. Master, very famous master or teacher, Kongdang Tempe Dume. In one of his teaching, he says, the foundation of Dharma practice is whether you have a good mind or a bad mind. If you have a good mind, means positive mind, then the foundation of spiritual practice, Dharma practice is there. Good mind is a mind which tries to directly and indirectly benefit others. That's called good mind. So that is the foundation of all your higher spiritual practices. The door, the gateway to Dharma practice is listening to the teaching. If you don't listen to the teaching, you will not know the meaning. If you don't know the meaning, you will have no idea what to adopt, what to discard. So the gateway to Dharma practice is listening. In fact, ear is a gateway. It's open, some holes there to let the sound enter inside. Huh? So the gateway to Dharma practice is listening to the Dharma teaching. It's by listening, not just hearing. As I made a distinction yesterday, there is a difference between hearing and listening. Not hearing from here and sending it away from here, but listening and then retaining it in your mind. Listening to the teaching dispels the darkness of ignorance. So listening is just like burning a lamp, bright lamp, that would dispel the darkness. It's an interesting example, you see. Let us say this room has been closed for a long, long time. There never has, light in this room. Any of the light, candle light or sunlight, or let us imagine this room has been kept dark for, say, 1,000 years. So that kind of darkness, which is kind of stored for 1,000 years, can be dispelled just by burning one butter lamp. So it's interesting, you see. So that darkness that has been there for so long can be dispelled by just one candle light or one light that comes from the bulb. So that means, as and when you listen to the teaching, develop the wisdom, develop the knowledge, then that's the way to dispel darkness. And listening is such a precious thing that once you listen to the teaching and retain the meaning of what you have heard, what you have listened, then that is real dharma, real wealth in the true sense of the term, because that wealth that you got through learning, through listening, is true wealth in the sense that that wealth cannot be stolen by thieves, cannot be taken away forcibly by robbers. That is the greatness of these inner qualities, including listening. It will never become an excess baggage. It will just be with you inside, and you will be able to deal with all kind of situations, problems and difficulties and ups and downs in life when you have that insight, when you have that listening, that learning, that knowledge. Therefore, the value that you get from these teachings is priceless, actually. So therefore, in ancient times, the Buddhist teachers, they really focused on how to cultivate these inner resources, this inner wealth, which can be yours all the time. And these inner resources are of such a wonderful nature that the more you share, the more you get enriched. In terms of external wealth, when you share something to others, you become less of that wealth. If I give this watch to you, I have no watch. You see, if I have 2 watches, I give one to you, then I have only one. But sharing knowledge is not like that. The more I share, the more I become enriched. And this internal knowledge can be your constant friend, reliable teacher, all time to come, in all kind of situations and difficulties. You see. Yesterday when we had this talk by Professor John Nelson on the experimental Buddhism, he gave some examples from Japan, which is highly developed country, Japan, developed country, but having the greatest number of people committing suicide. You see, clearly showing there is nothing much to do with external richness. It is the internal kind of poverty. And some years back when I was invited to give a talk in one of the Japanese temple, I also said the same thing. I started by saying, I'm so happy to be able to meet you, talk to you, the same Buddhist brothers, sisters, and at the same time you're doing so well in your economic development and so forth. I said all the nice things in the beginning. Then after that I said, I'm also shocked to know that you have so many people committing suicide, which is not in conformity with the Buddhist teachings. You see? So when you don't have this internal resources, internal qualities, then you don't understand your self-worth. Then people start thinking, oh, what is the purpose of my living here? Oh, nobody is loving me. Oh, nobody is caring me. And then they go into such a desperate situation, they go to the extent of committing suicide. It's happening in many places. So therefore, what is being taught in Buddhism is, don't depend upon others for your peace and happiness. Instead of depending on others, you should be a source of sustenance and peace and happiness to others. And it's not just Buddhism, but any thinking person can find that out, that what is outside of you, you really have not much control. So therefore, what is outside of you, be it your relatives, be it your friends, be it your wealth, you cannot count on them to give you that long-lasting peace and happiness. So you have control over what you have within yourself. So use that, manipulate that, enrich that, strengthen that, and thereby we'll read later on. There is a meditation called a meditation where whatever object comes within your mind, that will become a cause of peace and happiness to you. There's a meditation called, making your mind happy all the time. Whatever situations you are into, whatever objects you see, you will always be happy. How can you do that? You can do that because at the end of the day, or after all, everything is more or less our mental creation. That's why mind is so important. More or less, I'm saying. Or primarily, I should say, to be more logical. Primarily, everything that we come into contact is how we see things. And we need Buddhist practice because we are not seeing what we should be seeing, but we are seeing what we want to see. That's the problem, you see. Therefore, we never change and never become better. We are unable to strengthen our inner facilities because we are seeing all the time, but we see what? We see only what we want to see, not what we should be seeing. We hear, we listen, but not what we should be hearing, but what you want to hear, you see. It's a very interesting thing that we should observe. So therefore, now it is important to take some time. Yesterday we touched a little bit about importance of getting peace through one-pointed concentration, staying in isolation and so forth. That is important because you need to examine yourself. What kind of life I am living? Is it the life that I am living, is it really going towards giving that genuine, long-lasting peace and happiness that I am aspiring, that I am trying to get? Or I'm just distracted. Yes, most of the time we are distracted, we are sidetracked by so many things that is pulling us apart. So many things pulling us apart. See? And we give so much credit to the dictates of the five senses, the sensual objects, the luring sensual objects, the sensual objects in the forms of various kinds of temptations. We just get completely sucked into those things. And as a result, we are never able to identify our true self, which is the source of power, strength. So therefore, what the Buddha is teaching is returning home. Returning home. Returning home. I will tell you a short story, very interesting story. A story told by the Buddha. Once a hawk, the bird hawk, caught a felon. What is a felon? I'm not so sure. Felon, F-E-L-O-N. Probably it's a small bird. Okay? It's a small bird anyway. It's not important, yeah? It's a small bird. So a hawk comes flying down with full strength and catches hold of that felon and takes him into the space, Then, while on the way, the felon says, I wish if I have not wandered outside my area, my home, my familiar territory. Because I wandered outside my familiar territory. That's why you were able to catch me and I become a victim today. If I am in my own territory, you would not have been able to catch me. So then the hawk said, what is so great in that home where you live, in that territory? I will release you. Go back there. Then still I will be able to come and catch you and kill you. Then he released that bird. And then the bird quickly goes to his hometown. And he just ducks deep into the ground and hides himself, and the hawk was not able to catch him. So the point that is being told here is not being he's able to just hide there in the ground, but what is being told is we become a victim of many problems, difficulties, because we go outside of our domain, our real home, which is the mental home. And we get distracted and go outside the boundary of the home. In this text it talks about the big city, the mind is a big city. So we go outside of that and get distracted by the lures of the senses, you see. And when you go after and chase these senses, then you become a victim. We all know about that. We know all about that. So therefore, what is being taught in Buddhism is making you come back to your home, the home of the mind, and understanding its potential, and thereby using the full potential of the mind. If you are able to realize the full potential of the mind, cultivate all the positive qualities of the mind, just like the Buddha, just like His Holiness Dalai Lama, always happy. His Holiness doesn't have to go after all these sensual objects as we are all doing all the time. He is always working, either traveling and talking to people, or back in his home, always in his room. For many people, you might think, His Holiness' life is very dull. People even might think like that, you see. But he is having the happiest, the most meaningful life. You see? So that's the thing. So it is important, while it is 100% sure that we will not be able to make that instant development, instant change overnight, although we are living in the age of instant happening or automatic happening. There is no such thing called automatic enlightenment or instant enlightenment. There is no push button enlightenment. But it is possible to make that development and progress and go towards peace and happiness slowly if we make an attempt. Every day we can change, we can become better and happier. So therefore it is worthwhile to undertake this project. You can call it the new project of my life, especially in the case of many of you who are kind of fresher or listening to such teaching for the first time, then you can make it as a new project of your year, this year. That in this year I will do this, do that. And that therefore I'm tempted, it actually comes in the text later on, but before I forget, I want to tell you. It's a kind of commitment that you need to make, where you need to say, whatever may come in my life, turbulence, agitation, frustration, depression, loneliness, or whatever disturbances may come in my life, I will never make my mind unhappy. That's the commitment you need to make. And that's the essence of teaching of this text. That is the essence of the teaching of Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara. Whatever may come, I'm saying, whatever may come, I will never make my mind unhappy. Because if you make your mind unhappy, then all the negative emotions, they get their food, they get their ration, and then they get empowered. In Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara, he says, if you don't want to get angry, if you want to stop anger, and if you really think anger is your enemy, and if you want to stop anger, then stop giving food to anger. Just like when you fight with your enemy, and if you want to corner your enemy and destroy your enemy, then you stop the electric supply, the supply of the food and so forth, and you starve your enemy to death. Similarly, exactly in the same way, if you don't want to get angry, starve anger, meaning don't give food to anger. And what is the food for anger? What is the food of anger? Unhappiness of mind. People don't get angry when they're happy. See, people get angry when they're unhappy. So unhappiness is the food of anger, and similarly food of, I would say, many other negative emotions. Frustration, depression, all this comes when you are unhappy. So how would you make your life happy all the time? How would you make that? You can make that by understanding that all is my mental creation. There is nothing good or bad in one sense. There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes so. Thinking makes so. Right now you are all listening to me, sitting here. The room may not be so warm and things like that, but still you are enjoying. It looks like you are enjoying because your mind is ready. When your mind is not ready and somebody had forced you to sit here for an hour and a half, it will be terrible because your mind is not ready. Your mind is not ready. You fancy somebody and marry somebody. Why of all people you marry this person? Because your mind likes it, that person. And you think this person is good, does the job, you see. It's in your mind. Therefore, many of the great Kadamba teachers, they say, this thing called happiness and suffering is total lie. This thing called happiness and suffering is a total lie, because it's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. When your mind is ready, let us say if you are going out for a picnic, then halfway through, if there is a hail, there is a storm, still you will try to dance there. Take the maximum out of that situation which is not so good. It's hail, there is a storm and snow, so many things. Still you will try to take something good out of it. Take some photos and you will be happy, you see, because your mind is ready. When your mind is not ready, you may be surrounded by best of the friends, best of the food, luxurious accommodation, still you will be complaining. You see? You will not be able to enjoy it. So it's really, that's the key thing, how to deal with your mind and how to empower yourself. We talk so much about empowering other people. If you want to empower other people, first empower yourself. And you can do that if you understand the significance, the importance, and start working, start not just talking, but start working. You can make your mind rich, powerful, peaceful, happy all the time. Or at least relatively much, much happier. And Buddhism has contributed much towards such happiness, if you take the examples of the Tibetan refugees. You see how much the Tibetans have suffered. I'm again not saying the Tibetans are comparatively better than other people. I'm not making that kind of comparison, but I'm saying Buddhism has really, really benefited the Tibetans. How much we have suffered. More than 1 million people died, killed, in all kinds of ways, horrible ways. Still people are suffering. In exile, in refugee also, because of His Holiness and because of our culture, because of religion, Tibetans look okay. But if you think carefully, we are still living the life of a refugee, you see. So there will always be limitations here and there, you see. But despite of all these limitations, problems, lack of freedom and so forth, still Tibetans are able to look after themselves, maintain their cheerfulness. It's not because of any other thing, because of this religious culture, which was in Tibet for so many centuries, and which all our forefathers practiced it wholeheartedly. So therefore, I normally tell people that Buddhism, whether you like it or not, for the Tibetans, Buddhism is in your gene. See? Buddhism is in your blood, whether you know it or don't know it. But you came from your parents. And parents with their Buddhist way of life had conditioned the gene, I can say. Scientifically, I can say. So it is in your gene. And because of that, you have some kind of good habits. Like for example, there are many Tibetans who remained in Chinese prison for many, many years, and then later when they were able to escape to Dharamsala, and when they were interviewed by journalists and so forth, many of these people who interviewed these Tibetans, they were kind of surprised. They couldn't believe their eyes or ears. This man, has he been in the prison for so many years? It doesn't look like that. By seeing his resilience, by seeing his calmness, by his being able to remain cheerful and laugh, they were unable to believe that this person was in prison for so many years. You see? So what I'm really trying to say is, it will help you. And it has helped so many people. It's very, very important to understand that. Especially the younger generations need to understand that. Because if you forget all these inner qualities and just go after the external facilities, wealth, just like any other people in the world, then Tibetans have nothing much to contribute, you see. Today so many people like Tibetans. They come to Dharamsala to study. They sit in the foot of the great teachers and learn from them, study this text. Here in the library, so many Tibetans from all over the world come to study Tibetan language, right from Ka, Kha, Ga, Nga. Why they are studying? They have their own language, they have their own script. So why they are making so much effort in studying Tibetan language, script? Because with that they hope to one day read Dharma text by themselves without having to depend on a not so good translator, you see, or not so good translated book. So therefore it is really the task of us, the younger Tibetan generation, since you already speak, you are Tibetan, you speak Tibetan language, you know the script. So it's important to make double effort to understand this, important significance of preserving this dying Tibetan culture and religion. See? And if you do that, you will be happier, your family will be happier, you will be able to preserve your culture, you will be able to preserve your language, you will be able to preserve your dharma, and thereby you will be able to share it to others, benefit many others. And thereby you will also get more friends, Tibetan friends, you see. So it's mutually beneficial, But if you just forget all these things and learn only some of the modern subjects, it's just for living a life, maybe necessary, of course, it is necessary, it is good, but it's not going to make great contribution to the rest of the world. You see, we need to understand and appreciate the fact that we have a religion which talks about well-being of all sentient beings. All sentient beings. Imagine which religion talks about that. You see, a religion which talks about the well-being of all sentient beings. So when you talk about well-being of all sentient beings, it includes taking care of the environment, the water, everything. So such is the greatness of this teaching, you see. So therefore, the gateway to Dharma practice is listening. Listening. It's important to read. Listening means not just listening, but it means reading, listening to the teaching, reading the teaching, understanding the text. Now, luckily these days, there are so many good texts. Of course, in Tibetan, so many, but in English translation also there are many good texts. So learn to buy those good texts. Learn to read those good texts. Okay, it's very, very important. So the foundation of your Dharma practice, is whether you have a good mind or a bad mind, or not so good mind. That's the foundation. So meaning that in the whole of your life, try to maintain a cheerful, beneficial, good mind. That's the foundation. If you don't have that foundation, then even if you talk about very complicated Buddhist philosophy, shunyata, emptiness and so forth, it will not make much difference or much impact. The foundation is to be a good person. That is the foundation. And the gateway to Dharma practice is listening to the teaching properly, studying, reading the text. Okay? The essence of Dharma teaching is the unification of good heart and good head. Good heart and good head. That means unification of compassion and wisdom. That is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. Meaning that on the one hand you should really have a good knowledge of the way things are, the good knowledge of the law of nature, good understanding of the way things are. And based on that you should cultivate that warm heart, compassion or loving kindness or bodhicitta, whatever you want to call it. Of course, we'll be reading about that later on also. The more you are able to understand the nature, even from a secular point of view, not just from Buddhist viewpoint of view, even from a secular point of view, the more you are able to understand the nature, the more you will be able to develop that feeling of closeness towards everything. Human to human, human to sentient beings, human to environment, human to world, and so forth. Because if you develop so that's why these Buddhist teachings are helping you develop a wider, bigger perspective. Because much of the sufferings and problems that we encounter in our life are because of narrow-mindedness. We just focus upon oneself and what is related to oneself. I, me, and mine. Making self-references all the time. But if you come out of that cocoon, instead of talking just I, me and mine, if you talk about bigger things, the universal law of nature, the reality of all sentient beings, the reality of the pervading suffering that is there with all of us, the interconnected reality. If you are able to understand all this from a bigger perspective, then you will be able to see that the real binding force of all of us is basically same. So you can't really make any big superficial, differentiation by saying, oh, this is from America, this is from Tibet, this is from China. This kind of labels and differentiations are just minor, small text, small labels and text. They're not their object. Their real object is that we are all born exactly in the same way. Americans, when they are born in the same way. Tibetans, when they are born in the same way. It's not that the Americans, after their birth, all the kids, they start laughing. And the Chinese, after their birth, they all start crying. Not like that, you see. We're all born exactly in the same way. We all become sick. We all become aged, And then finally we all die, you see. This is the big picture, the big law of nature. You see? And normally when you're a little bit successful in your own small domain, we forget all these things. We forget all these things. So therefore, in your life, it is important to remember the sameness of all of us. And I told you earlier also that sometimes when there's a big tragedy, then people come back to their senses, at least for a short time. Then they try to be, nice to each other, help each other. You see, when there's a big tragedy. So that's why in Buddhist teachings also they say suffering is introduction to happiness. When suffering comes, tragedy comes, don't get completely discouraged. Because these are basically challenges. Challenges give you opportunity to grow. If there's no challenge, where is the room for showing your bravery, your talent, your intelligence? You see? So this so-called problems and sufferings are actually wonderful opportunities, challenges. They're important, you see. Otherwise we'll never learn. We forget everything. We only go after ephemeral, pleasures, and we forget all these things. And I've seen this several times. I told you this story, personal story of. You all have that story. When you fly in an aeroplane, or when you check in a 5-star hotel or a relatively good hotel, then in the beginning part of that occasion, everybody feels that I'm somebody, why should I bow down to this one? I'm somebody, why should I bow down this one? Everybody, at the most they'll say, hello, good morning. The way you say it is also a little bit, good morning. You don't say like this, good morning. It's different, you see. Good morning, at the most. Otherwise, people don't want to also show those kind of pleasantries. Because I'm somebody, you're somebody. Okay, fine. Go your way. We will soon meet you. So let us take the example of flying. So when we check into the aeroplane, go into the aeroplane, again we have that same kind of demeanor. Sit there, the flight is smooth, the flight attendants come, serves you nice food, everybody is so far good. There's not much need for me to talk to others, kind of attitude. But suddenly, ladies and gentlemen, tie your belt. We are soon facing a turbulence. We are entering the turbulent zone. So very soon, there is a turbulence. The look of the face completely changes. And a sign of desperation, people hold on to the seat, which means nothing. But still, you see. And then at that time, people really, they just come down and then they start smiling, you see. Because at the end of the day, when everything fails, you need to smile. You are compelled to smile. I will give you a wonderful example, very wonderful example. You can do this after the class. Go and see this Indian men and women that's working in our library, bringing the mud on their head. The whole day they carry this mud and dirt in the cold. We are sitting here, still they say, I'm feeling cold, They're out they're outside, they're out and working the whole day. They don't rest even on Sundays. They work. But you will always see them smiling. You check for yourself. I'm not fabricating. You check for yourself. You see? But those of us who are termed as highly educated, rich, we don't know how to smile. If we smile, it is sarcastic smile, or politician smile, or ridiculing others, That's the thing. So clearly showing, unless you have some kind of contact with the nature, the reality. These people are in contact with the nature, reality. We are not in contact with it. Most of us are not in contact with the reality and nature, you see. So we completely lost touch with the nature. So therefore it is important my main point was to come back home and cultivate these great twin qualities of wisdom and compassion. Wisdom meaning understanding the law of nature. In Buddhism we call it shunyata, but it is basically talking about understanding the law of nature, the way things are. And why should we know the way things are? Because because the Buddha is saying, because it is better that you live in accordance with the law of nature. So are we living in accordance with the law of nature today? There's a duplicity here. In one sense, science is trying to go with the nature by saying, everything you do should be, objective. You should always experiment, observe, find things for yourself. That is the science slogan of the science or scientists. But then on the other hand, you see that they are coming up with so many things where you are completely shielded from the law of nature. You try to live a life which is surrounded by environment which is just man-made, not the real nature, you see. So because of that tendency now we are losing touch with others. Despite, interesting, we are living in a very paradoxical way of life. Despite with all these facilities, mobile phone, internet, website, you are contacting others through internet, you are contacting others through website, you are contacting others through your mobile phone, but the real person-to-person contact is not there. And the worst of that is that you are not in touch with yourself. As I said earlier, all these external paraphernalias are for contacting others, what is outside of you, not to yourself. You see. So you completely lost touch with yourself. You can't use mobile phone to call yourself or use internet to call yourself. The only way to keep in touch with yourself is reflection, meditation, contemplation. And that is what is taught in Buddhism. So we need to be a little bit careful. While I'm not trying to be cynical, I'm not trying to turn the clock back, but we need to really think carefully. What do we mean by facilities? What do we mean by development? Today, unfortunately, development means many high-rise buildings, and in between these suffocating high-rise buildings, if there are some shiny roads, and many cars are running in between, we call it well-developed, advanced city. But people living in those big buildings, suffering from loneliness, depression, and even just to go to work. In a car, you are moving in a car just to go to your work. It takes 2 hours to go there, 2 hours to come back. That is the situation, unfortunately. So is that progress? I don't know. I'm stupid. I don't know. Because these are all invented by many clever people, you see. But all I'm saying is we need to think. We need to think. And not just follow every other people. Because every country is following other country. If America is the most developed country, everybody will follow exactly like America. China is now trying to become exactly like America. Unfortunately, in terms of material development. Not in terms, again see, this is the paradox, you see. Not in terms of the good things, but only in terms of the external constructions. So it's very important to think carefully and don't allow yourselves led by the nose. So that's the essence of Buddha's teaching. Combination of good heart and good head, compassion and wisdom. If you have compassion but have no knowledge, you will not be effective, you will not be capable. So you must be a knowledgeable person. Even if you have a lot of knowledge, but if you have no consideration for others, no feeling for others, then your wisdom is, I would say your wisdom is then corrupted wisdom. Your wisdom is corrupted wisdom. If you are somebody who has lots of knowledge, actually I cannot call that wisdom. I can call that probably just knowledge or information. If you have just lots of knowledge or information and no feeling, no sense of responsibility for others, I would prefer not to have such kind of knowledge. Because people with lots of knowledge, with no consideration for others' well-being, these people are bringing the greatest destruction on this earth today. Because they know, they have knowledge, they can write it, they can read it, they can say things. So they bring a lot of damage and destruction on the whole globe. Against which, if you look at this, for example, these workers, these poor villagers, they are illiterate. So in their own way, they may be suffering, but they don't bring any destruction or unhappiness to the rest of the world, you see. You can see that. So who is greater? And therefore, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, sometimes, even when you see an insect crawling, His Holiness says, you can make a prostration to them in one sense. He said this in one of his teaching. Because they are very lovely, very helpless, very weak. So they themselves are suffering. But what kind of destruction they are bringing on this planet? Nothing. In the case of the helpless earthworm, it even fertilizes, gives the fertilization, you see. In its own way, it's making its contribution. It's not harming anybody. But the so-called human beings, manipulating, calculating, with their self-centeredness, it's very frightening. So the purpose of all these teachings is how to tackle with that ghost within, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when at one point, when he was giving an initiation, so before the initiation, you make some offerings of dharmas to the obstructing evil forces. That's a tradition. Saying that, okay, you don't stay here, we are doing some spiritual dharma practice, and so the disturbing evil forces, you should not stay here, I'm giving you this gift, take this and go away. So to denote this, they make some offerings. And then after that, the Lama sprinkled some water as a gesture of sending away that disturbing evil forces. So at one point, His Holiness said, I feel like not doing it outside, but feel like doing it to myself. It's a very interesting thing, you see. And he said, the real evil force, we always think real evil force is coming from outside. The real evil force is here inside. Evil force is what? Evil force is somebody that disturbs your happiness, others' happiness, your peace, others' peace. And then look at this self-cherishing attitude. Look at the self-grasping misconception of reality. Look at anger, look at jealousy. All these strong forces of negative emotions, they are inside you, held and hearty. And you are feeding them all the time. Look at this. I call them terrorists. Today we talk about terrorists coming from outside, but from Buddhist viewpoint, these are the terrorists. We talk about a terrorist outside hijacking aeroplane, but I tell you, these terrorists inside you are hijacking your life. They are making you weak, they are making you vulnerable, they are making you confused. So if you are able to get hold of, I think we have a text here. Read this text called The Will of Sharp Weapons. which is a text written by Dharmarakshita to fight against this self-cherishing attitude. And he outlines all the bad things that the self-cherishing attitude has done from time immemorial. So read such texts, then you will see, That's not to say you are bad. See, make a distinction, you see. I am bad or you are bad. We are not saying that. We are saying make a distinction between you and the negative emotions within yourself. So try to minimize, reduce and get rid of these negative emotions and strengthen yourself with the positive emotions. Yeah. Now if the practice of compassion and wisdom is the essence of Buddhist teaching, and then how would you measure that your practice is really hitting the target? How would you measure whether you are doing any practice or not? And if you think you are doing some practice, how would you measure your success? So the same teacher, Kongtang Tenpa says, the measure of your practice is that whether you have developed some kind of discussion towards this life or not, some kind of sadness towards this life, some kind of frustrations to this life or not. Again, be careful. When I say frustration, this does not mean to, ask you to get completely hopeless, get dejected, and then say, oh, there's no meaning in life, I commit. Not that kind of thing. Frustration or sadness here means seeing the essentialessness of many of the things that we are doing in this life. I can't say that this is from where the word cyclic existence came into being. This notion, samsara, cyclic existence, came into being. Cyclic existence means you repeat the same thing, do the same thing again and again. Then you are born in the same way. You die in the same way, born in the same way, do the same stupid thing, die, born, That is called cycle of existence. If you want to have a modern word, I can say you are a photocopy. Recycled over and over. Recycled. So don't become a photocopy. Try to show your originality. Don't let yourself recycled, again and again, and producing the same paper. I think it was the same master who said, the activities of this life are like the waves on an ocean. The waves on an ocean. When one wave ceases, other wave overtakes it. So the activities of these lives are like the waves on an ocean. The more you do, the more crops up. And especially, here I'm especially talking about those meaningless activities. The meaningless activities you can do all the time. Like even when you are alone in your own small room, you have something to do the whole day. You see? So therefore it is important that many of these not so useful things, you stop and do those things which are much more beneficial and long-lasting. Another Tibetan teacher says, the unfinished work is like old man's beard. The more you pick, the more it will grow. The more you try to take them out, the more it will grow. Like old man's beard. And in the White Lotus Sutra, the Buddha says, the worldly activities can never come to an end by doing, but they can come to an end by stopping. By stopping. We have also read in this text, giving up fruitless activities. We are not asking about stopping all activities, but we are talking about stopping fruitless activities. Why? Because this life that you have, this precious human life that you have, is a very precious in the true sense of the term, because of your capacity, because of your intelligence. So if you use this wonderful human intelligence and human capacity just for doing small things which even animals can do, That's like eating, sleeping. That's a great waste. That's what the Buddha is saying. It's a great waste. Realize your importance. Wonderful human intelligence, wonderful human capacity. The being able to stand erect and move around. If you read that story, it took millions of years for human beings to get erect and do the work. If you read the story that is found in science, and having got straight, being able to stand up erect, his hands were free, and as a result, he was able to do many things. And he was able to do more thinking, and therefore as time passed, his brain became bigger and bigger. The human beings have the biggest brain now. So with this big head and big brain, great intelligence, if you just waste it, it's a really great wastage. That's why in Buddhism we call it precious human life, precious human life. So therefore, clearly perceiving the senseless of running after so many activities, which really doesn't make much sense. We need to stop many of this. If you want to bring about real change, stop many of these things. Do something which will bring long-term benefit to oneself and others. So yesterday we read verse number 8, and we in the verse number 8 we said that is also achieved through mindfulness. So with the practice of mindfulness and conscientiousness, which is actually the practice of morality, then you will be able to develop genuine veneration and respect to the teaching. And that genuine veneration and respect to the teaching will be there only if you spend some time in isolation, reflecting and thinking about the greatness of these practices. That's why you are encouraged to remain in isolation or live in isolation as much as possible, so that without being disturbed, you are able to really focus and think about the importance, long-term importance of these practices. So veneration is the quality of peace alone. Peace alone. In order to give peace to the rest of the world, first you should be at peace with yourself, you see. And that peace will not come just like that. That peace has to be cultivated by ensuring that your mind is not excited, your mind is not distracted. Knowing thus cultivated with perseverance, we discussed this yesterday. How can one successfully give up activities which are not beneficial to others? You can do that by maintaining mindfulness. Remember, mindfulness means remembering the good things that needs to be done. Every day remembering, okay, today I have to do this one, today I have to do this one. Have I done this one, Remember the good things that needs to be done. And judge yourself physically, verbally, mentally, whether you are doing it or not. So that is the cultivation of mindfulness and conscientiousness. And that is basically the essence of practice of morality. And when you have the practice of morality, then you can cultivate one-pointed concentration. As we have discussed earlier, practice of morality means doing three things: not harming others, helping others, and cultivating positive qualities. These are the three types of morality I have explained to you earlier. So if you are somebody who had lived a life where you have not harmed others, where you have removed the negative emotions, where you have cultivated the positive emotions, and where you have helped others, then naturally your life will be very happy. There's nothing to regret, nothing to repent, because you lived your life in such a way that you did all the good things. You removed all the bad things. As much as possible you helped others. That's the meaning of your life. That's practice of morality. So having lived such life, you will be remorse-free. I have nothing to hide, nothing to regret. And when you have nothing to hide, nothing to regret, that is a deep, genuine satisfaction. And that deep, genuine satisfaction is called happiness. deep, genuine satisfaction is happiness. Therefore, happiness is totally different from pleasures. By enjoying a good food or meeting a good friend, things like that, you will get some kind of pleasure. But that may not necessarily give you deep satisfaction. But when you have done something to the best of your knowledge, keeping your conscience as the witness, when you have done something really good, selflessly, then there is a genuine satisfaction. That's called happiness. There is happiness. So when you have that kind of genuine satisfaction, nothing to hide, nothing to regret, then your sleep will be peaceful. Because you have done nothing that will haunt you in sleep. You will be completely peaceful. Your sleep will be very, very peaceful. Your dream will be very, very peaceful. And then next day when you wake up also, your mind will be completely relaxed and fresh. See? And then because your mind is completely happy and relaxed, all your sense organs will also function much better. And therefore you will be able to see things much better, hear things much better. That's true. I'm not fabricating it up. That's true. You will be able to appreciate each and everything. So when your mind is calm and happy in such a way, then you can concentrate. That's the meaning of concentration coming from morality. So morality in Sanskrit, the Sanskrit word for morality is called shila. If you directly translate this word shila, it means cool. This is a very interesting phrase that is very often used in Canada and many other countries. If you wear a nice coat, they'll say cool. You look cool, you see. You see? So when you have not harmed anybody, helped everybody, did the right thing, then your mind is fresh and cool. When your mind is cool and not tormented by the heat of anger, jealousy and so forth, when your mind is cool, peaceful, then obviously you can concentrate. So that's why morality is compared to the ground. Just as on the ground, on the earth is support for everything, animate beings or inanimate beings. So similarly, if you have that basic proper way of life, of helping others, not harming others, cultivating positive qualities, removing negative emotions, then all other qualities can be cultivated in that ground, in that field. If that is not there, you can talk many big things, but you will not be able to cultivate anything. It is like trying to construct a house without any ground. Of course, these days you might say, oh, we can construct it in the space. But there also some support is needed, you see. So by maintaining mindfulness and conscientiousness, that means morality towards one's precepts, mindfulness is achieved through wholehearted veneration towards the precepts, as I explained yesterday. Mindfulness will be there when you have genuine appreciation, wholehearted appreciation towards those positive qualities, when you have seen the importance of cultivation of those positive qualities. And what are the qualities of that peace that we talked so much about, which is the capacity to cultivate correct understanding of the right view? In meditative equipoise, I like this word actually, equipoise. For one-pointed concentration, in Tibetan we use the word nyamsha. So in English equivalent is equipoise. When your mind is lopsided, you can't concentrate, you see. When your mind is distracted, you can't concentrate. When your mind is harmonious, of equal stability, then it can focus. In meditative equipoise, one will know the perfect view as it is. When your mind is calm and concentrated, then you can understand many things, including the perfect view, or shunyata, or emptiness, as it is. Perfect view as it is, without denigration, without exaggeration, you will be able to know things as it is. Okay, as it is means the ultimate reality, the Buddha said. So by stopping external distractions, the mind will not be distracted from peace. See, by stopping the external distractions, this is something that I have been repeatedly saying this morning. One way to get that long-lasting peace and happiness is to learn to come back home from the distractions, especially the external distractions. Finding your home, coming back home, homecoming, okay? External distractions. Now the external distractions are so much, it's overwhelming. And I tell you my own experience with that. When I was, it was before I became His Holiness's translator, when I was just studying in the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, attending His Holiness teaching. Then at that time, because I don't have to translate, I can concentrate what His Holiness was teaching. I can listen properly and take notes. And sometimes I get so inspired that I think I must do something. I must do something. On the spot, I really get inspired. I'm sure you all have that kind of experience. But believe me, it lasts only up to the door of the temple. As and when you step outside the door of the temple and join the rest of the big flood of people, the crowd, it's almost like saying, Geshe, come back, join the rest of the family, You're completely carried away by that same familiar situation which inspires you to do the same stupid thing again, you see. So it's not easy, you see. So that's the meaning of external distraction. So especially in the beginning, when you are not so established in your Buddhist knowledge, Buddhist practice, it's important to spend some time in isolation, think more about it, reflect more about it, think about the importance of your human life and so forth. And then gradually, hopefully, even when you mix with the crowd, you'll be able to at least perceive, okay, where I'm going, what I'm doing. At least there will be some checks and balances then. So in the beginning, as I said repeatedly, it's important to spend some time to, strengthen your inner qualities. By stopping external distractions, the mind will not be distracted from peace. You see, the peace is found within, not outside. So this is what he is saying. By stopping the external distractions, the mind will not be distracted from peace. This is a big challenge. Ordinary people are almost saying, the peace will be found in the external distractions. Let us go to the shopping mall, there is a peace there. Let us join a fun club, there is a peace there, you see. That's our tendency. But these Buddhist teachers, they are saying, by stopping the external distractions, the mind will not be distracted from peace. So here we can do an experiment. Maybe you can do that tomorrow morning. Just spend, I'm sure many of you are doing, but those who are not doing, you can do that experiment. Just tomorrow morning or any time you have. Just spend 10-15 minutes reflecting inside. Trying your best not to get distracted by external situations. And then see what is your feeling. In fact, we can do it here right now. So let us sit properly, do a small meditation. As a kind of experiment. Now you can all see the Buddha image? Not so clearly, or can you see the image, Buddha image? Can you all see the Buddha image? So look at that image for a few seconds. Then after that, without looking, you will get a mental picture of that. Try to get a mental picture of this Buddha image and meditate and concentrate on that. So do this meditation for a short while. All right. So now tell me, what did you get? Were you able to concentrate just on the Buddha image? or many other things were coming, or nothingness, darkness, blackness, or what is coming in your mind? What was the experience?
There's a few distractions creeping in.
What were the distractions?
God, I can't even remember now, but what I'm doing at lunchtime today.
Yeah, things like that. Exactly, interesting, you see. So this is how you need to do this, start. So tomorrow you do that in the evening or whatever, whenever you feel comfortable, do that a little bit. The sixth Dalai Lama, in one of his poems, he said, "The face of my teacher, which I meditate, never comes in my mind. The face of my girlfriend, which I don't meditate, always come in my mind." You see? Exact something like that, you see? Something like that. So you can clearly see in what area you are habituated, you see. So therefore, now here one thing you need to learn is when you do the meditation is not done by the eye, number one. It's done by the mind. So therefore I've asked you first to look at the image and then get a mental picture. This is a wonderful technique, because when you have this mental picture of the Buddha's image, then basically you have Buddha everywhere you go. Again, it doesn't become an excess baggage, you see. That's why great teachers like Milarepa, he meditated in a completely empty cave, which had nothing there. But he was one of the greatest practitioner meditator because everything was in his mind. You see, those of us who can't do that, we think, we need to just create the external situation. So many things there. So therefore the temple has to be built within, image has to be carried within, in your mind. So that's wonderful news. You can have Buddha with you all the time. Okay? No problem with airport, nothing. So you learn that. Okay? Then second, when you try to, you got some sense that when you try to meditate on the image of the Buddha was not coming, but something else was coming. That's one thing that you noticed. So now what you need to do is, you choose that object of the Buddha, and then you have to make that struggle. Every time something else comes, say, okay, no, I'm not asking you, I'm just asking the Buddha to come. So if you do this repeatedly, then gradually it is said that you can lengthen the time of your being able to focus on the Buddha's image. And then gradually, hopefully you will be able to just concentrate on the Buddha's image and nothing else will come in your mind. That's a big progress. It will take a long time. So you have a lot of things to practice. Another thing which you might have noticed, once when you remain in completely silent and let your mind feel things, let your mind see things, let your mind hear things, you see, you could easily feel that as and when you try to meditate and concentrate and remain still and quiet, you immediately notice some of the pains in your back on the much more vivid. Did you? Earlier, when you were not focusing on your mind, many of these things happening in your body, you had no idea what is happening in your body. But when you sat still, then you suddenly felt, there is itching going on there, or there is a pain on the neck. It becomes much more vivid. Then you could also hear much more clearly the sounds of the chirping birds, the sounds of the coolies talking, Have you noticed that? The sounds become much more clear. You see, all this shows when you are paying attention, all your senses actually become much more alert. You see? So even when you are taking a food, that's the problem in today's world. You see, even when you are taking a food, delicious, it may be a delicious food, but you are not actually tasting it, you are just throwing it into your mouth. Because while you are eating, you are thinking about something else. While you are having lunch, you are thinking about dinner. You see? That's the problem, you see. So therefore, this kind of process of teaching helps you concentrate on whatever you are doing and enjoy that moment. Live in the moment. Live in the moment. When you're eating something, just appreciate that food. And thank those who had provided that food. And then taste its flavor. It will be completely a kind of new thing, you see. So that helps you improve your digestion, and so many good things are there, you see. So you can see the benefits of such one-pointed concentration. By stopping the external distractions, so if you stop these external distractions and focus on whatever you are doing, you will be able to achieve things much quicker and much better. This is something like specialization. If you specialize in one thing, you can do many things better. But this is not exactly like the Western kind of specialization. Western kind of specialization is, you know everything about nothing, I call it. You know everything about nothing, that is specialization. We are not talking about that kind of specialization, but specialization in the sense of concentrating on whatever you are doing. So mindfulness, conscientiousness is needed, not only during meditation, but throughout your life. Remembering what you are doing, remembering what you are talking, Even in, okay, we'll read that later on. By stopping the external distractions, the mind will not be distracted from peace. In the absence of conscientiousness, others will overpower you, other negative emotions will overpower you. Forgetfulness, if you don't maintain mindfulness and instead if you have forgetfulness, then that forgetfulness leads you to something other than your objects of focus, and thus your mind will become distracted. But once you possess mindfulness and conscientiousness and stop becoming distracted by external objects, you will gain control. So gaining control. Forget about gaining control over others. First you gain control over yourself. Forget about getting independence from others. But first you get independence within yourself, you see. Let the mind remain focused on a single object. Single object, focusing on a single object means bringing all the energies of the mind together, so that whatever you do, you will be able to do it much more effectively, and it will abide there. So if you undertake this practice of one-pointed concentration, get rid of the external distractions, and then gradually you will reach such an extent where you will be where your mind will be able to stay on that object just like a mountain. So through this kind of process of training of one-pointed concentration, you should reach a stage where your mind becomes serviceable to you. Right now you are controlled by your mind. Now you need to control the mind. And through this practice, gradually you will be able to gain such a control over your mind that when you ask your mind to do this thing, yes sir. Go there, yes sir. Cultivate compassion, yes sir. Cultivate wisdom, yes sir. Help that person, yes sir. Okay, don't get distracted. Remain concentrated, yes sir. So the mind will become obedient, serviceable, functionable. Then you can achieve anything you want. Right now you don't have the control. When you try to say something, the mind becomes rebellious. You see? Because you are simply trying to force the mind to listen to you, but you don't have the tactics. You don't know the meaning of loving kindness, you don't know the meaning of compassion, you don't know the meaning of wisdom. So when the mind rebels, you have no logical explanation to silence that rebellious negative mind, you see. So with the cultivation of all these positive qualities, you come with techniques, skillful means, to explain to the mind, no, what you are doing is wrong, this is the right way, it's good for you. Then the mind will listen to it, you see. Okay? So let the mind remain focused on a single object, and it will abide there for as long as you wish. And from that will arise many benefits. Of course, then you can do whatever you want to do, the good things, I mean. Then of course you will get all the benefits. Some questions? We never had questions. Some questions?
like if I sit and I feel and before I came here I used to be like on my own, and like I felt I'm very much the boss over my mind, and I never had any problems from like really external things. I could always find a solution, but now I come to another country and then I feel so many enemies and I feel attacked, and I feel like some people are taking the power over me, and like I cannot find the roots of my truth anymore. How to deal with that?
Again, this is very much related to how you perceive things. Number one, how you perceive things. Number two, because you go to a different cultural context, different situation, people's behavior, how they relate to other people, all this may be different. So you have to be aware of that and live accordingly. Okay? Because you come from different cultural context, these people are from different cultural context. So how to relate in a different cultural context, how to defend oneself, at the same time not to offend others, all these things you need to learn. That's a very ordinary, worldly wise way of doing things. So that's, I think, important in your case. And then secondly, many of these things may be your mental projection, you see. If you remain suspicious, then even when somebody is smiling at me, when you are suspicious, then why this fellow is smiling at me? There must be a reason for him to smile at me, you see. If you think in that way, then you can't trust anybody, you see. And if you trust everybody like that also, then you become very gullible, you see. So you need to. There's one very important teaching in Buddhism, in the mind training teaching, which says, "Dumba julla rang solcha." That means change your attitude and behave normally. Behave normally. That means if you are practicing Buddhist teaching, don't pretend that you are a transformed person. Change your clothes, change your hairstyle, speak differently, all the time talking about negative emotions to make a show of things. Not like that. Change has to come within oneself. But externally you behave like normal people, other people, you see. Then it will be much easier to relate to other people, okay? Because the transformation has to take within oneself, not so much your outside or external appearances. Yeah. Then, it's using common sense, when you go to different country, depending upon the situation of that country, you have to be careful also. That's the ordinary wisdom, you see. Like, for example, in a place, if it's a risky place, then a woman traveling alone, thinking that it should be like in the West or things like that, then you get problem, you see. So these are like common sense things.
For one's meditative practice, if we don't have a spiritual teacher of any sort.
What?
For meditation, if we don't have a spiritual teacher of any sort, how do we know that we are on the right track?
I think here it's really very much related to using common sense. Because generally speaking, you know to a great extent what is good for you. Okay? You know a lot what is really good for you. So do those things to start with. There's a lot of work to do there. Because knowing is not equal to doing. So as I said already, there are a lot of things that you already know. It's definitely good for me, definitely good for others. Do those things. Okay? And if you play with this English word meditation basically means thinking. Okay? Sometimes when somebody is in a very pensive mood, then someone comes and says, "What are you meditating?" So that means, what are you thinking, you see? So use this very important human faculty, the capacity to think and judge, and see for yourself whether anger is good or bad. If it is really bad, develop that conviction that it's bad, and then try to distance yourself from that. Even with this kind of things, it's a lot of things to do, lot of work to do. So do with that. And then occasionally, there are so many good books are there, like many of the books written by His Holiness Dalai Lama. You can pick up those books, and many of these books talk about how to do a formal meditation also. So the teachers are there these days. And then there are so many good teachings on DVDs and CDs, So these days it's really a lot of facilities are there, yeah. Yeah. Right. His question is related to last night's talk, Experimental Buddhism, where this professor talked about innovation and activism. So he's asking how much innovation and activism is happening in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Innovation, a little bit of innovations may be happening, but not to a great extent. We are definitely using some of the modern medias and technologies. If you want to include that as an innovation, we can include those things. Those things are happening everywhere. And then if there is any innovation that's taking place, it is primarily done by the Westerners, not so much by the Tibetan teachers. Because the Western teachers or Westerners, many of the Western practitioners, they are using Buddhism in psychotherapy, as I said yesterday. They are using it in psychotherapy. They are using it in mindfulness. There's John Kabat-Zinn, I think. His huge book on mindfulness. It's all from Buddhism. He mentions it several times that it's all from Buddhism, you see. But now they are using that mindfulness practice even in US Army, based on that book. It's used in business, so many things. So those kind of innovations are taking place. And then activism. Activism is important because His Holiness himself several times said that the Buddhist monks and nuns or Buddhist practitioners, they should really come out and engage more with socially beneficial activities, not just talking and teaching and remaining in a monastery, but come out and work with the people, you see. So I'm working with the people, I'm not in a monastery. I'm joking. So that is also happening. Like, for example, in all the major monasteries, they've all now started their schools, they've started hospitals, So it takes time, it's slowly happening. But we need to do more. Yeah. But then I also made an observation yesterday to the professor's talk that when Buddhism comes into a new situation, new culture, new surrounding, like the modern situation of science and technology and so forth, then it's important to teach Buddhism in a way that people are able to relate to, people are able to understand it. But at the same time, there is a risk. If you simply try to, without understanding the depth and the vastness of Buddhist teaching, if you simply come up with something which only caters to the needs of the people, to make them laugh and smile and be happy, that's not going to solve the problem, you see. That's not going to solve the problem. So therefore it is important that you do not dilute the Buddha's teaching. Do not dilute the Buddha's teaching. This is very, very important, because when we talk about bringing about long-lasting peace and happiness, then through the Buddhist teaching we need to undertake a major operation, major surgery. That major operation and surgery cannot be done unless you really understand the depth of the Buddha's teaching. Just by dealing with the superficial, surface level of teachings, it can make people happy and laugh and smile. That is also okay, but it's not going to uproot the root cause of the problem and difficulties. So that part is, I think, is very, very important. And sometimes I jokingly tell people, because if your purpose is only to make people come to you, listen to you, and laugh and fun, then just don't talk about Buddhism. Don't talk about samsara. Talk about Kentucky Fried Chicken. Talk about McDonald's. talk about the new malls coming up down there, talk about going for a picnic, everybody will be happy. You see, so we should, while we should, make every effort to make sense Buddhism in today's world or in the 21st century, it's also equally important, and even more important, not to dilute it to the extent of making Buddhism beyond recognition. There is a risk here, because people will dilute it to such an extent, and everybody go for that shortcut. If there is a shortcut, unfortunately there is no shortcut, but they will go for this superficial, seemingly shortcut practices, and they will never do that, the major, most important practice. There's a really great risk there, because that major, in-depth teaching of the Buddha can be understood by rigorous study, rigorous reflection, and hard work. Not easy. Okay. Thank you. So pray in silence today. Whatever you want to pray, pray. Thank you.